Hi everybody, Dave Rauch here, CEO of ProTech Building Services, and welcome to the Maintenance Manager, which is where we have conversations about all things HOA and all things condo. And today I am lucky because I'm joined by Martha Perkins. Martha Perkins is a Community Association Manager from Austin, Texas.
Yes.
And prior to Austin, she was in California for quite a few years.
Almost
quite a
17
few
years.
And has high-rise management experience, which is really interesting because next week is the 5-year anniversary of the collapse of Champlain Towers. So we're going to cover what happened there a little bit today, and Martha's advice to boards and managers on how to deal with a situation similar to that. And so anyhow, before we get to that, let's swing to Martha and see what you're doing. You're living in Austin. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and
Sure.
your company and the community you manage?
Absolutely. I am with Cohere Management, which is actually based out of Arizona, a nationwide company that specializes in large-scale master planned communities. I'm currently on a developer-controlled 55 and up master plan community just outside of Austin.
Right.
And
what's it called?
It's called Kissing Tree Master Community. If you're in the golf world, you will know it. The golf course is managed by Troon. So everybody comes from Troon to do golfing there. It's a great community. It reminds me a lot of someplace I would have wanted my mother to go live. And stuff. It's 55 and up. There's 2 sub-associations that are condos, but for the most part, it's small traditional homes for those looking for their forever home, but ready to have a community.
And how big are the lots? These are fairly.
They're 40 to 60-foot lots. They're not huge. The whole purpose of it is less maintenance for everyone, and they have most of the homes are 2 to 3 bedrooms. It's developed by Brookfield Residential Properties, and so they have a niche in the 55 and up community and building those developments.
So this sounds to me like it's a lot easier to manage than what you used to manage in LA. Is that correct?
It is and it isn't. I'm now managing people more than I'm managing assets versus in LA, I worked with established communities. I've done everything from very small 2 condo units to, as you mentioned, high-rise communities and large-scale master plan. All of the communities in LA that I managed were all very well established and mature. And so I did less managing of people and more managing of assets at that.
And Kissing Tree is relatively new. They started building.
They started building in 2017, and we're about a third of the way built out. They just opened up a whole new section, and it's a great community. We still manage the assets with them. It's not like just because it's a new community. I know a lot of companies, and you'll be thankful for this, but a lot of companies say, "Oh, it's a new build. We don't have to do anything." And I'm like, "No, you've got. This is when you start doing all your proactive maintenance, so that 30 years down the road, you don't have large special assessments." Which is my niche in the HOA management world, is dealing with communities that have large special assessments because there was deferred maintenance in the 80s and 90s.
Now, you said that it's still a developer board at Kissing Tree.
Yes.
And are there any homeowners on the board or just developers?
One of the associations, the sub-association, has about 165 units. They have 1 homeowner on the board, and they are about to transition in the next couple of months to a homeowner-led board.
Gotcha.
But for the most part, the developer is still very hands-on on the board. The master is still completely developer-controlled.
Gotcha. And so normally you would be educating board members all the time.
Yes.
They're homeowner board members. Do you find yourself educating developer board members on, the key things about maintenance and asset protection and governance and things, or are they hands-on or are they hands-off?
This particular developer is very hands-on. They're very knowledgeable. Their regional VP very much knows the HOA world and knows the HOA laws. So I will say I do a lot less hand-holding with this developer. But in general, there is a lot of education that goes with developers because that's not their niche. Their niche is to build. Their niche is to sell. They don't specialize in the niche, and that's why they bring in a management company to specialize in the property management of the association.
Yeah, that's funny because I met with the head executives at Horton, D.R. Horton, in I believe it was Dallas, and they had just purchased Centex. But Don Horton made it crystal clear that they're interested in sales, sales, sales. So nothing
That is
can
their
get away.
number one priority.
Yep.
So sometimes it is a matter of educating. This is what's going to happen if we don't do this, and this is what the law says.
Yeah.
And educating them on that stuff.
Yeah.
But
so tell us a little bit about the challenges that you have with this existing board, the Kissing Tree board, or the management of the community. Just
I would say I don't really have any challenges with this particular board. They're very cohesive or cooperative and listening with us and working with us. They do listen to the homeowners. A lot of developer boards do not necessarily listen to the homeowners. They do. I think the biggest challenge with the board is getting the homeowners what they want, especially with a 55 and up community in Texas. A lot of these homeowners have never lived in an HOA before, so they don't understand if we need stop signs in a certain location, why can't we just put stop signs in that location? Why won't the developer just, build a pocket park here, while they're at it? Every other neighborhood has a pocket park. Why can't we have a pocket park?
Yep.
They don't understand the drainage and stuff. So it's educating the homeowners about why the developer chooses not to do certain things. And it's getting the developer to understand basically what the homeowner's desires are and see if we can bridge a compromise. One of the things at Kissing Tree we always say is explain the why behind the ask, and then hopefully everybody can get together and have a cohesive resolution.
So it sounds like you do a lot of education of the homeowners who are new to HOAs.
Yes.
At the homeowner meetings, and I'm assuming that it's a 55-year-old and older community, and so that a lot of people come to the board meetings.
They do. And we have this is not your average run-of-the-mill association. They're high-end homes. They're not. So most of the people that come to this association are high-level executives that were in your shoes at one point in time. So they know how to make decisions. They know how to get stuff done. They just don't understand how it works in the HOA world. So there's a lot of opinions being thrown a lot of ways. And so it's very helpful in some respects because they get it when we tell them no, and they understand the why behind certain decisions. But it also makes it a little bit more challenging because you have that many more opinions. We typically have, because it's declarant controlled, we don't have to have the HOA meetings as often as a homeowner-led board has to have them, but we usually have one HOA meeting a year where we do business, and that's where we do the budget, any changes to the documents, things of that nature. We have quarterly what we call town halls for each association, and that's basically a high-level on and off executive discussion about what's going on in the community and concerns that the homeowners have, where they can talk to the declarant and get that information.
And it's got to be great having the developers on the board who actually know and understand HOA law, understand how HOAs work. been on boards before, so they understand the challenges that they're facing. So it makes it easier on your job, right? To have people that
Yes,
know what they're doing behind you. So
absolutely.
that's cool. On the other hand, you said you have two condo communities in the
Yes.
in Kissing Tree.
Yes,
Okay.
so we have the Kissing Tree cottages and the Kissing Tree villas. The villas are basically duplex style
Hmm.
properties, and those are transitioning to homeowner control
Uh-huh.
as we speak. Then the cottages are just very small. In California, we call them PUD, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
just they're single family homes, but the land is owned by the
Gotcha.
association.
So no stacked condos.
No
So
stack condos. So from
no
that, from
problems.
an asset standpoint, and even my villas that
Yeah.
are duplexes, the shared common wall is owned by the
Yeah.
owners, not the association. So in that standpoint, it's
Yeah.
super easy. What is not easy is we have a developer still on site. We have a golf course and a restaurant and a bar on site that are managed by Troon. And then we have the HOA side. And explaining to people that that's a developer issue, that's a Brookfield problem, that's
Sure.
a Troon problem,
Sure.
this is our problem. Getting that line separated amongst
Yeah.
everybody is the biggest challenge we have.
Interesting. Now let me ask, do you have to do that to communicate to people that have those issues, understanding what's common interest versus separate interest versus developer control? Do you guys have a maintenance matrix that the attorney developed that shows the ownership?
They
They-
do,
yeah,
yes. They have a maintenance matrix, but like most maintenance matrix,
yeah,
they're very
yeah.
law and they're not detail oriented.
Do you have a maintenance manual that
We do not have a
yeah.
maintenance manual. That is what
I
we
know
need.
we wrote those for Brookfield in California, but California obviously has SB 300, which is a law which requires the manuals in California.
Right.
But those manuals are great help for you to communicate to owners, who owns what. And so,
Right. And I'm very familiar with those manuals because I've worked with other associations when I was in
oh,
California
you did.
that had your manuals.
Oh, cool.
And so I have an assets team. Kissing Tree, actually, Foreign Association has a fairly large staff. We have about 22 employees
Wow.
on site, and 7 of those employees are asset management, the maintenance team. And
Yep.
so those people are developing an proactive kind of maintenance schedule and preventative maintenance. And so I've told
Perfect.
them about your manual. I'm like, we need the manual, but it's not in the budget yet, but hopefully it'll get in
Well,
the
it sounds
budget.
like they could make their own pretty
Yes.
easily. So the clubhouse and the other things that are managed by the developer, Troon, the golf course and all that's still owned by the HOA though?
It's still owned by the HOA. So the way it works, there's actually 5 buildings. There's
Hmm.
what we call the Junction, which was the sales office and welcome center. They've
Hmm.
now opened up a new sales office in the new section. So that Junction is being converted as we speak to a multi-use facility.
Hmm.
Then they have the original clubhouse, which was Independence Hall. They have a swim center, which is an indoor pool. They have a fitness center, and then they have the golf club. And those 5 buildings, plus they have a little bit of container buildings. I want to say it's 3 buildings, shipping containers converted into buildings that we maintain. And those are all buildings maintained by the association.
Hmm. Very interesting. And it sounds like a great community. And is it close to Austin or is it further out in the
It's
suburbs?
further south of Austin. It's about 20 miles south of Austin in San Marcos,
Oh,
Texas.
so it's
Mhm.
quite a ways out. Okay,
Yes.
cool. Well, let's switch gears. Unless you have anything else on Kissing Tree, which sounds like a great place to
No,
work and a great place
it's
to
a
live.
great place. Even if you don't want to live there, come play golf there. So it's
Yep,
fun.
at Troon course, it must be good. Let's switch gears and go back to your history in California And because I know you and I are doing a presentation tomorrow for FCAR, Foundation for Community Association Research, where we're presenting this new report called Built to Last Strategies for Extending the Economic Life of Community Associations. And this was fun to write, and it's going to be fun to promote tomorrow because it comes
and it's
tomorrow.
super helpful.
Yeah. And so you and I are going to be doing that tomorrow. And while we were doing that, I learned that you managed a high rise in LA that had some problems similar to Champlain Towers South.
Yes.
And you were successful in communicating to the board to get that stuff done. So can you just take us back and maybe paint a picture of that one community?
Absolutely. I started with them, I want to say in 2019, might have been 18. And when I got to the building, the very first thing I noticed as we were doing a tour of the building, in the parking garage, there was spalling all throughout.
Spalling concrete?
Spalling concrete all throughout the ceilings. And this was right after Champlain Towers, but nobody knew at that point the extent of what caused Champlain Towers. We just knew speculation of what caused it. So I noticed the spalling, and then they were telling me about these leaks. They had, on average, one unit had a leak every week, like a week.
And
we had a leak.
What kind of leaks were these? Were these plumbing leaks?
They were plumbing leaks. They were pinhole leaks. They were hot water heater leaks.
Oh, wow.
All different kinds of leaks. And come to find out, previous board members had been told that the building had been replumbed. They replumbed one main line that went up. This building was 11 stories high. And so it went up the whole 11 stories. But none of the lateral lines were replumbed. So they had the original galvanized plumbing that was 40 years old.
Gotcha.
And nobody had raised the assessments in the 80s and 90s. They did start catching up the assessments in the early 2000s, but by then the damage had been done as far as catching up.
Let me ask, though, it was 11 stories high, and how old was it?
It was built in the 70s, so it was 40 years old.
So it was older than Champlain Towers, which was built in 1980.
Yes.
So it was 50 years old or so. And what city? You don't have to tell us the name of the community.
It's city on the border. It was actually, no, it was in LA, Beverly Hills. It's literally the border of West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, and Los Angeles, right? In that neighborhood. Nice area, lots of money. They just didn't believe in throwing the money into their building. In addition to the plumbing issues and the spalling, which were the major issues, the interior was outdated. The balconies were not to code.
The pilasters.
The railings. They were only 3.5 feet tall. So if I went out there, I'm all legs. So when I went out there, it was just above my knees and so I could see if you were drinking, having a party, and just a little bit tipsy and hit just the right way. It was very possible for somebody to flip over. And then the spacing wasn't 3.5 inches, it was 5 inches between the railings.
Yeah, it needs to be 4.
With wrought iron railing. And so it just wasn't to code, which was fine with the city, but it wasn't fine with the insurance company. So the insurance company wanted their balconies brought up to code, which that started us down the rabbit hole of, well, I can't even fix the balcony railings until we fix the plumbing. I can't fix the carpet and the paint and the outdated interior until we fix the plumbing. And it all just cycled back to we have to fix the plumbing.
And I agree with you. The plumbing is the most important thing. But how did you know that? Because of experience?
Just because of my previous experience and the amount of leaks that they had. I think within the first month that I was there, we had 5 separate leaks that the current building engineer and I were tackling.
Wow.
And I know that building forwards and backwards because there were so many problems. I didn't have an option but to learn the building really, really quickly.
Wow.
And about that same time is when all the reports about Champlain Towers and exactly what happened with Champlain Towers came out.
Mhm.
It was also around that same time frame that the laws changed in California requiring the balcony inspections. And even though this was not a wood structured, it was steel, all the wood structures were coming. So we were learning about balconies and learning all the laws and things. So really, I want to say 2018, 2019, the HOA industry was learning the importance of infrastructure of buildings at that same time. And so as I'm uncovering this wormhole of problems that this building has, I'm learning what it means down the road. And what I learned is this building had the exact same structure as Champlain Towers and the exact same problems. They weren't on the water like Champlain Towers was, but they had rebar they had an above ground pool that was above their parking structure.
On the podium deck.
A podium deck pool that was above the parking structure. That waterproofing was failing, which was causing the spalling in the parking structure, which, as we've learned from Champlain Towers, means that your rebar is now rusting in the interior. And so I just knew it was a matter of time. And so because of all the circumstantial evidence that was out there in the world and the knowledge that was coming into the HOA industry, I was able to educate the homeowners. This is what needs to be done. This is what happens if we don't take care of it. And so the board at that time, it was a great board. They were like, let's get it all done. Let's do one very large special assessment. There was a community down the road that had done the exact same thing.
Oh, great.
And so they were like, they did it. It was huge. Some people couldn't afford it and they moved out. But then once they did it, the home values tripled. And so that's what they were looking at. They were looking at the fact that on either side of this community, within view of the community, you had these brand new high rises going up with glass railings and modern features. And that's what that community was competing with.
Yeah, great comps.
So they were like, let's update everything at the same time and do everything all at once.
So you had a cooperative board.
I had a cooperative board. What I didn't have was a cooperative homeowners.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to come back to the board in just a second. But first, I want to understand all those leaks a little bit better. Now, were the homeowners submitting those to their insurance companies for claims, or were they asking you to submit them to the HOA's insurance?
It was a combination. It was a combo. So we would have them submit it to their insurance, and we would submit it to ours, and then the insurance companies would fight it out and segregate it however it needed to be segregated. Ultimately, their insurance company got tired of paying for the water claims, so they said either you replumb your building or we're going to do a $100,000 deductible. Replumbing the building was millions of dollars, and the HOA could not afford it. I think the HOA had roughly like $400,000 in reserves. They just didn't have a whole lot of money in reserves.
And so that was going on at the same time they were talking about doing a big remodel. And so obviously the plumbing was probably one of the most expensive components of that remodel.
Yes, the plumbing and the balcony.
How did that all happen? How did you orchestrate all of that?
So we brought in individuals initially. We brought in a plumbing expert that was used to replumbing high-rise buildings. We brought in a balcony expert that was used to doing reconstruction and weatherproofing on exteriors of building. This high rise actually didn't even have the lift system, and I can't remember what it's called now. You'll know the gear that you have to put on the roof to protect for the OSHA requirements. It was so old it didn't even.
Davits.
Yes, the davits. Thank
The
you, the
lifts,
davit
yeah.
system. So they
Yeah.
didn't have the davit system on the building. So we were going to have to install the davit system because nobody could do work and stuff.
Yeah.
So it really was a wormhole the more we got into
Sure.
it. The board was looking at redoing their whole podium deck because we knew we had weatherproofing issues in the podium slab.
Do you have planters on the podium deck?
Luckily, they did not have planters
Yeah.
on it. They did have some potted plants that
Mhm.
led to it, but mostly the water was from the rains that would come in, and there were cracks all along. And the cracks were not in the podium deck. The cracks were between the podium deck and the building structure because the way that structure was built, there's rebar that's attaching the podium deck
Sure.
to the building structure, but they're actually two separate structures connected by that rebar with weatherproofing on top of it. And that was so if you walked around the perimeter of the building, there was a crack in between there, but that's what was causing all the spalling underneath and everything.
Yeah, in California, obviously, is a little different.
Yes.
Florida, as we can see, is raining right now.
Yes.
It rains all the time. California, it rains in the winter times. But that water causes just as much damage in California as it does here.
Right, and even if it's not raining, you have your irrigation that's going off and causing water damage. I had another association that had a similar issue with their weatherproofing, and it was all their interior irrigation that was causing it. And that was a new community. It was only 10 years old, but we had to redo all the weatherproofing, and for the same exact reason. They had a podium kind of patio area, courtyard area that connected to the buildings in the same manner, and that was failing.
Again, when developers give the association an operations manual, a maintenance manual, it shows them that, hey, you've got to waterproof this podium deck, pool deck, whatever, and here's how you do it, and here's what happens if you don't do it. That's the key.
That is the key.
In my opinion, and developers weren't doing that in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
They were just putting buildings
Not even, this was early 2000s, and they weren't doing it in early 2000s
that's true.
either.
That's true. Let's go back to the board of directors, which was, all gung-ho on remodeling the building. So were there any interesting things about how that whole process went for you? Any insights you can provide to, board members and managers that are going to be viewing?
I don't know that I had a really great board, I will say, but it came with educating them. And I know I had a board president who was all about increasing the value of the property and increasing the security of the property. That was his gung-ho motive. So when it came to talking to them, I put everything in valuation numbers. I worked with realtors on, hey, if we do this project, if we do this, what are their numbers going to look like on their units?
The value of the real estate. What does it do to the increase?
I wanted to speak to the board members' language. I had a board member that was all about the property and maintenance and saving. He had kind of your mindset, right? The proactive maintenance. So it was reading my board members and educating them and learning who they were so that I could speak in their terms and speak what I knew what needed to happen because I'm an educated HOA manager. They're not an educated HOA manager, so I have to speak their language to them. And so that's what it took. It took what is the language that they need. And all honesty, the last person that I brought in was the project manager. to
Oh,
come and sell them on everything.
sure.
Usually, a lot of times, managers will bring in the project manager first because it makes their lives easier. It was easier for me to sell them individually on each component and then bring the project manager in and have the project manager say, this is how we're going to do it. Now that you understand the problems. And
Yeah.
we had town hall after town hall to not only educate the board members, but to educate the homeowners
Yeah.
as well.
And that's critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those town halls. And I know that they were doing those at Champlain Towers, and they were commencing on the work at Champlain Towers when it collapsed.
Yeah.
The whole process just got slowed down by COVID, actually. Um, but you were lucky in that you didn't have a board that was faced with having to special assess and not wanting to do it. They
No,
wanted to do
they
it.
wanted to do it, and
So-
they knew it was
so-
going to be a large special assessment, but they knew the benefit
Mhm.
of the plus side of
Right.
it once we got over that hill. And yes, I was very beneficial in doing that. But I've had in the past, I've had board
Yeah.
members that where we cannot raise assessments. We have a lot of seniors that live here and they're on a fixed
Exactly.
income and we just can't do it. And so those boards, it's all about educating. If we don't do it, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to pay a $2 million special assessment project. You're now going to have a $7 or $8 million
Sure.
special assessment project. And how is that going to hurt you? Let's get ahead of the curve instead of chasing our tail every
Yeah.
time.
And that's all you can do.
Mhm.
All you can do is explain to them what's going to happen if they don't do it. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but look at Champlain Towers as
Right,
an
and
example.
that's the last thing we want.
And they actually they had come around, they were doing the work and in process when it failed.
Who wants to say, oh, we were doing the work, it's just too little, too late?
Yeah,
No
yeah.
one wants
So-
that.
But there's a big difference between working with a board that understands real estate values and that when you put $1 in, you get $2, $3, $10 out.
Right.
That's a great
And
board.
that was the
these-
advantage I had because I
Yeah.
had a board president who was of that mindset. He was
Yeah.
actually a real estate investor and had rental properties
Yeah.
all over LA. So he understood that, and
Yeah.
he was able to help me educate. But again, it was just educating, the one board member that it was all about the maintenance. Getting those experts one-on-one to meet with the board one-on-one and have that was crucial for that person and turning his thinking around. And, it really was making them understand and not even, I was going to say making them believe, but it's not even making them believe. It was making them understand that it's not Chicken Little. The sky really is falling here. Like, you guys have to do something.
Yeah.
Or else your building's going to collapse.
Yeah, or just go to zero in value or a lot less in value. So that is such a great message for managers out there and boards that if you've got homeowners that are on fixed incomes, you have a harder lift.
Yes.
A much more difficult job, but you have to. I mean, you can't make them do it, but at least you can do your best to explain to them what's going to happen.
You have to educate them, and it just means that you have to stretch out. In that market at that time, we were able to get a bank, and that was the other thing we had to do. We had to go to banks and say, we have this huge project. We have 276 homeowners that are going to be involved in this project. How can you stretch out the loan for us so that we can make it affordable for our homeowners?
Oh, that's great.
And what I've learned too, just being in the industry, a lot of the homeowners can afford it. They just think they can't.
Yeah.
They don't want to give up. Nobody wants to give up their Starbucks coffee in order to fix a plumbing pipe that they can't see.
So that's great. The bank became a partner.
The bank became a partner and worked with us on look, this is how much it's going to be, but we're not going to charge you at once. We're going to stretch it out
Sure.
over 30 years.
And when did you bring the bank in? What part of the process?
Bank in after we educated everybody on all the problems and the money was the very last thing we
Gotcha.
told everyone. They looked at the project and they knew it was going to cost, and that was the hardest thing to keep a secret from the homeowners. The board was on new numbers immediately, but we kept it from the homeowners because we wanted them to understand the problems first. We didn't want them to, we knew if we said, hey, it's going to be a $27.5 million project, that's all everybody was going to focus on. When we said, hey, it's going to stop us from having to have leaks and remediation once a week in your building, it's going to allow us to leave the pool open all the time. It's going to increase the value of your property. So if you have to rent your property or if you're renting your property, you can rent it for that much more. We wanted them to understand all of that before we hit them with the negative news of this is how much it's going to cost. But when we did hit them with that news, we had the banks right there at that town hall ready to explain this is how we're going to make it affordable for you.
That's a great process that you developed there, and I hope they appreciate your help.
Yes, they were very appreciative. That's great. I left that association to take guardianship of my mother in another state, and otherwise I probably would still be there today. I love that community.
Well, this is great information for our viewers, both board members and community association managers that will probably face some of the same things that you faced in California, and hopefully they face a great association that you have there in Kissing Tree in Texas. That seems like the dream job.
It's a great community.
But thank you so much, Martha, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I look forward to our presentation tomorrow. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Stay safe.